imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing, it's a science place, it's a scientific fact that we are all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. And additionally, welcome to it. This here is episode 284 of Protonic Reversal. And special guest for tonight is an incredible artist and crafter of not just of sound, but of things, of actual devices and machines that are often used to make sound. You know him as author and punisher, Tristan Shone. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, this is a release eve for you too. Again, at the personal, whenever people are consuming the show, you know, at the time of this recording, it's release eve.
Yeah, it's one of those nights. It happens like once every 3 years. So
release eve comes once a year.
Yeah.
Did you get your release eve presents already, or do you wait till the morning of the release? No, sorry.
I'm imbibing on it right now.
There you go. Fantastic, and it's this is a cool this is a cool record. I enjoyed the video that came out in quite a bit in December that came out. I think most folks also would be satisfied enough with the music. I love, and I mean love, that you also have the drone machines coming. Most people would not be releasing devices as well, and I think that's fantastic. I saw that. I was like, holy crap. And also, of course, if that makes sense. And I mean both of those things as a compliment. So obviously you've been crafting your own devices for quite some time to make the music that you make as author and punisher. It seems like a great merch table item for a very specialized set of fan, for sure. But what was the thought process behind going this route? Is it like, hey, we made this cool things, share it with the world in a way that's beyond the music? Like, what led you to this?
You mean just for can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound fantastic.
Okay, great. I think we got it fixed on the echo cancellation. So yeah, I mean, drum machines have been something I started making when I was in grad school at UCSD. I was just trying to find my path in terms of making visual art. I was always playing metal bands, but I was an engineer as well. And that part of the creative side of me, I was trying to find that. And so I went working in a fucking lab, Corning, clean room, bunny suit, that whole deal just sucked the life out of me. And also trying to play in a band, tour 2 weeks a year. So going back to art school, was the thing. And I had some people that influenced me and said, hey, you can build robotic sculpture and use the skills that you have in a more creative way. I didn't know it was going to mean making musical instruments. So when I was at school, I was sort of building speakers and playing guitar and drum machine. And that slowly turned into hey, I could start building these sort of big airplane throttles. And I started to slowly replace all the instruments with actual controllers. These sort of really ball bearings and machining steel and CNC machining and this kind of stuff. And so, man, it's just been once I figured that out and I got rid of my guitar and all that, I never looked back. And the new album is I've started a company now with sort of making these things, and that's sort of the culmination of all those years, you know?
Well, and the tactile controls too. That's so kind of unique in when you have the use of technology for like, you know, one person doing like a lot of things. Usually it's like they're sequence things, et cetera, et cetera. What I like so much about it is that so much of it is it's like literally you're doing a thing that does a thing. Like you're pulling like the lever, and like a thing is like grinding away, and like it's like the truest sense of, not that I would be reductive to say industrial, but the idea of like the original concept of it rather than as like a genre of music. And the only other band I can think of that really does that is Reptoid. Like Jordan builds all his own stuff as well, and it's a lifestyle choice is what it really seems like to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think I basically like electronic music, and I consider myself an electronic musician, although I play like more guitar-based sounding music. You know, doom metal is not usually electronic, although you're seeing a lot more now, which is exciting. But like it's typically like knob boxes and grids of buttons and a lot of menus and a lot of looking down and like using your fingers. And I don't know if it's the way my brain works, but I guess I'm more caveman. I'm more hands-on. I hate dealing with those knob boxes, and there's nothing, you can't rock out on stage by pressing a tiny button and spinning a tiny knob. And for me, the aggressive heavy music that we play calls out for large body-sized movements. And for me, that's how and a lot of people that express themselves, you know, that's how we work in a machine shop. That's how we work on a car. That's how we work in our yard. We do things that are the size of our bodies. So that's, for me, that's the way that's the idea behind drum machines.
Well, and it is something that is so unique, but it does make for a fun show. Like it is something where, yeah, you're not just watching a dude, play music, play set at all. And there is there's the possibility of things not necessarily working exactly as intended as well.
Oh, that never happens.
Which is part of the excitement, right? I mean, that's what makes a live show. So
that is a common occurrence. It's a nightmare. It's almost to the point when I show up at a venue, if I'm in a really good mood, oh, they got a good beer on tap, oh, they got great food, and I get too relaxed and I don't have the anxiety of something breaking, and then the show goes terribly wrong. I have to be in a state of total pain and anxiety to make the show work.
You have to be as much in inner turmoil as the riffs that are being pumped out into the audience, or it doesn't.
Yeah, to stay on top of the amount of wires and things that are connected.
Well, and so that's, I mean, is it just muscle memory at this point?
Yes.
I feel like you could film a documentary on your setup and breakdown process, and it would be relatively entertaining.
Well, I have to say I spent about equal amount of time wiring up like racks and making sure that I have the proper, I don't know, strain relief, all the dorky things that like you don't want to think about. But I spend as much time thinking about that as I do practicing, because
the actual music, yeah.
music. And honestly, it's kind of a cop-out. I really should be practicing more because
that's another thing that, you're in a rare echelon of folks that, since you craft your own things, that how do you divide the time between working on the craft of music and working on the craft of the machines, of the devices to make the music? Like where and if do you draw the line, and how?
Well, I'd say like in the last few years, I've sort of pulled back on the development of machinery because I sort of hit this sort of this crossover point where I realized that like I've sort of found a sweet spot for how I like to play, and developing drastically different machines would take me years to learn how to play. So I have something that I can play my drums with really well, and I'm not going to change that now.
Because it's you have it and it does the thing you want to do, and you're exploring that as an instrument, really.
Right. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to develop other things that will make drums, but I may not use them. I will develop them for other people because I have a lot of ideas, and I've tried out other ones. I've built 4 other devices that play drums that I don't use because I like this one that I built. And now with the company developed, we can make things that are ideas that we have, but they don't have to be part of my setup. And I have to say, I used to be much more of a noise musician and a drum musician, but now I'm much more of a, I want to play songs. I want to sing. I want to craft music live, And sometimes having a bunch of devices and complexity and masks that are, as much as that might be fun for the audience to watch, it's chaos. It's not going to sound good. Trust me.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say on this latest release. There's a lot more melody, than maybe from earlier stuff, and just from a sheer logistics standpoint of having a thing on your face, it's sometimes you're not going to be able to get it out necessarily as much as say Tony Bennett would or something, right? I mean,
oh, well, that's great. Even to be mentioned, Tony Bennett, that Author and Punisher and Tony Bennett, you don't hear that every day.
But I mean, so that was a conscious choice, right? You were like, hey, let's lay into this piece of it.
Well, I think what happened was after getting back from the Tool trip and having, I brought the best, sound and lighting and people along with me on that tour, in addition to having their crew, being able to talk to them every night and say, hey, what did you guys think? Hey, I'm having trouble hearing the vocals on this part, or the bass is so heavy. And I actually got to listen to Maynard's vocal mix through my monitors for a show. And I really got to hear what he hears, because I was having some issues when the bass is really heavy, like where are my vocals? And so that when you have that kind of uncertainty, singing light vocals over heavy music is difficult because it's hard to pick out the pitches when you're just like flooded with bass. You're like, whoa, I can't even hear anything. And so hearing how they craft the mix in his ears so that he can sing. Of course, he can probably sing perfectly anyway, but for me, they do everything they can to help him, and it really helped. And by the end of that tour, I could hear my pitch and vocals getting better. And so when I got home after that tour, I was like, oh, okay, I think I can do that thing I've been wanting to do, which is, be a little bit more melodic with my vocals.
So a couple things. First of all, with that, there's certainly a huge difference between a sound system that you're playing with at an arena that is, has every possible thing you could imagine, and playing, awesome art space that maybe the PA will just charitably say less than awesome. Yeah. So it can be a bit of a luxury as far as that goes. But yeah, not to bury the lead, that was a tour that you were on when the COVID hit.
Exactly.
If you were at this, Tristan, but
we missed 3 or 4 shows. We got through 20 or so shows, and then up in Portland, I was sitting in a hotel like, oh crap, and I drove back by myself and just went home.
When did it occur to you that like, oh, this is getting real? Like when was that moment?
I had a really bad hangover the night after Portland show at the Modus Center, and we woke up and we were fist bumping, elbow bumping instead of hugging and these types of things. And I went to Home Depot and bought like some respirator thing and bought a pizza, and was in my hotel and like not touching the knob, in the shower, all this kind of crap. That was it, That's when it happened.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it seemed from the outside that those were, shows. I mean, obviously those are huge shows, and when you're doing something like Author and Punisher, it's not necessarily by design for everybody, but by sheer metrics of the amount of people you're playing for, there's going to be a certain amount of people that have never heard of it. Like, hey, this is cool. But by the same token, that's a lot of people. These are huge shows. Like, we didn't know super spreader events were a thing necessarily in the parlance of reality, but those were ostensibly super spreader events without anyone knowing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, later on we found out that Maynard even had COVID, and we didn't know, or maybe he didn't know, maybe he found out through antibody tests or something. I have no idea. It was news to us, but we didn't really see him anyway, because he sort of is a little bit more isolated. But yeah, we didn't know of any. We weren't worried about it at that time. Even in Australia, we weren't worried. I should have been probably, but
in retrospect, it seems obvious. But the time, absolutely was not. There was nobody. If somebody said they had it all figured out, they were just the kind of person that's always going to say they already had it all figured out, because nobody did.
Luckily, I mean, we were pretty isolated up on stage, and I don't know. Now thinking about going back and touring, it's certainly it's been, I can't believe it's been this long, Yeah. I feel like I'm not, I'm nervous. It's like back in, I don't know, first time I ever went to Europe or something. I feel like it's 4 weeks away and I'm nervous as hell for this tour. I'm excited, but I'm like a little kid, you know?
I mean, I think the one good thing is that people aren't going to take it for granted as much, I think, right? I mean, hopefully.
Exactly. Like that person who's like, I don't know. There's always like some fan that writes to you forever online for like months before the show. Like, dude, what's the start time? What's the set list? Oh, blah blah blah. They're going to be T-shirts, and then they don't show up.
Yeah,
There's always every show. There's somebody like that. And you're like, oh, why do I wait? Why do I bother?
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's funny. So you mentioned, so we were talking about, going to Europe and stuff. It occurs to me that like, you're not just putting a guitar in a flight case and checking it, like this is, what is it from a pure logistical standpoint? How do you get your apparatus from point A to point B when it's like a fly out, fly in situation?
Man, how much time do you have?
We got all the time in the world, man. You tell me.
I've actually, most of my instruments have changed their design because I needed to figure out how to have, the minimal amount of bags in a 50-pound, 62 linear inch Pelican case. Because yes, you can go huge, but pretty soon, if you're doing like fly-in festivals and stuff, it's just unaffordable. You get $1,000 for the festival, but you're spending like $1,500 to $2,000 on the bag. So I had 3 bags, and then for me, like, so the instruments are designed in CAD with the materials, so I know exactly how much it's going to weigh in the case. And then you got cables and all this stuff, and then you got merch. And when you're traveling by yourself, I have a guitar player now, so like we can split the bags up a little bit, and I store, and then tables for me, because in Europe you've got these really strong DJ tables because electronic music is like a much more lucrative industry. So you have these really strong aluminum tables with the legs screw in. So when you bolt my instruments to it and I'm slamming on it, it's not sliding across the room. So
or breaking.
Finding these like German tables by this company Butech. We drove way out of the way on tour, bought these tables. I store them over there and they bolt together. And when I go to a festival, it's like, if you don't have these tables, I'm not playing, because otherwise it's going to slide off the stage. Those plastic roll, the US needs to up their table game. And
I believe you. Yeah.
There's nothing that pisses me off more. Like, it ruins my night if I show up and somebody's like, well, we've got this like there was a schoolhouse and we got this desk. You can bolt to that. And I got C clamps and I'm bolted and I'm bent over trying to hit the instrument.
Yeah.
No.
That sounds like a nightmare. Yeah. Because that's the thing is that I think folks that don't play don't understand like those kinds of logistics. Right. And I guess like there's sort of the more stripped down, easy to understand one would be like the cinder block that has to go in front of the bass drum or something along those lines so it doesn't scoot across the floor. But that stuff makes a difference.
They bring you those little bags like, oh, we've got these. And it's like this little sandbag that they use for like a photo stand. And I look at them like, that's not going to work.
That's not going to fly this man's arm.
I need like 3 kegs. Can you
bring exactly.
So we can put the kegs.
Is this filled with dark matter, sir? Because otherwise that's not going to work.
Yeah. Exactly. What kind of beer is this? Maybe Belgian, a triple stout or whatever. But
so the tables are a surprisingly big part of being able to successfully put on the show is what it sounds like.
Well, the original ones were welded. I used like steel and I welded them, but obviously like that was like early day drum machines. I did bring those machines on the Tool tour, but I try not to bring those out. It's a nightmare. It's very heavy to lift, like 300-pound disc, and they bolt to this like butcher block top. But you need light tables that I can spec, and I can tell the promoter like, hey, can you have these tables?
Yeah,
well, that's a huge part. And I have a set at my parents' house on the East Coast. I have a set here, and I have a set in Europe that I store. And and it's. You don't want to look. You got these instruments that are finely tuned machine things, and then you put them on the pedestal needs to look, equal to the instrument, and
right. You don't want to be on like a like one of those child card tables with like the fold out with the blue.
Yeah, and like the stands you can buy at Guitar Center. I was going into these like Home Depot equivalents. I can't remember what they're called now in like Germany and stuff, and going in and like trying to find like sawhorses. I can't tell you how many hardware stores I've been to in Europe trying to find the right stuff, and just like it's ruined the whole trip for me sometimes. I just can't find the tables.
Because you're basically on a quest. And then also even trying to get across what you're trying to do, I'm sure is just like a challenge where, well, why would you want to do that? Like,
and Europeans are very, as maybe you've heard, are very honest. Germans will come up to you and tell you, like, if you're playing on the wrong table, that's obviously not the right thing. Right. They'll come up to you, excuse me, I just wanted to say that I think maybe you need some better tables. And I'm like, at the end of the night, when I dropped the instrument, it tipped over, and then I'm like,
thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
My t-shirt got more expensive.
Yeah, t-shirts are over there. Thanks a pants load.
But your set was great, you know. And then,
exactly.
I tell you.
My favorite is the actually you were better last time, but this was okay.
This was okay. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So you kind of dropped it as a just as an aside, but you have another person in the band. You have a guitar player that playing that for I mean, as usually a man that is sort of like quintessentially known as like one of the one-man bands that isn't the, you know, bass drum on the back and cymbals on the knees one-man band, but like the one-man band, the fact that it's one guy doing everything. And it is usually a guy. But
you know, the Melvins, they always had a different bass player. There's like legends in there, like of who the certain bass players were. But I have had about 3 other guitar players. I had a drummer for a while, but all like pre-2000, like 8, 2009.
Pretty early on, yeah.
Pretty early on. And
which is weird to be like that's early on now, but whatever. Times of that circle.
Yeah, and then this album was just the producer Jason Began and I, like, who's also my partner in Drum Machines. He started playing a lot of the synth stuff, and I would write some parts, and he would run them through this like giant plethora of gear, and so that was cool. And then Phil Scrosso, who's my manager, who also plays in As I Lay Dying, and we've been friends for a long time, and I said, hey, could you play a lead on this track? And he did. And he just sort of added some other elements, and, you know, we were thickening up the low end a little bit, but I pretty much got that covered.
Yeah.
But he started adding some more, you know, ambient upper stuff and leads and just like little filling in the gaps. And it was, oh man, it was like immediately like, oh man, this is what we needed. You know, the mid high kind of like between what he did and what Jason did. It was like, it made all the difference. You know, I can just focus on what's down low in the rhythm and the vocals. And it's better because I'm not trying to do things with 2 hands and holding things out. And so now Doug Sabolic, who plays in Ecstatic Vision, he used to play in A Life Once Lost, is my guitar player now. And he'll be touring with me. So I'm pretty excited about that.
And of course, more people means you can have them check bags. And so you don't have to pay $200 for a checked box, right?
Exactly. I might even let him use one of the tables because I'm gonna also, like, some of the instruments I could, at least in the US where we can take things in a van, I could bring some and he could actually play some parts on the instruments too. So that'll be kind of fun.
So is this, of course, by doing so and by involving other people, there are things that are going to be outside your control. Is there any kind of like letting go process that you have to do for that, knowing that it's, you know, normally it's your vision, right? It's like the thing that lives in your head as much as it lives outside as sound.
Well, I mean, the parts that Phil and Jason wrote, I mean, like, I wish I could have kept everything they wrote. I mean, it was all like, I didn't cut that much, you know?
Yeah.
We really kept a lot of what they did. Phil just has known me forever. He knew the parts, and everything he wrote was great. Loved it. And even, you know, just the sort of swagger of some of the parts being like I don't know, just like jumping out there and saying, "Hey, this is the first Author and Punisher like guitar lead," or the cover, the guitar lead on the Portishead cover. I just
Glory Box, yeah.
It's not exactly the lead that's on the record, because we slowed the song down by like a lot, and so like he was playing the real lead, and it just sounded ridiculous. So he kind of wrote a new one.
Yeah,
but it had the same kind of, I don't know, melancholic, descendant like vibes, and it was really cool. I think. Sorry, it's my dog in the background.
When's my guest appearance?
Yeah, and so I think it'll be really. I'm not worried about any sort of control things. Like Doug and I have known each other. He's got his own band. He knows this is my thing, and he is just there to help it along. And that's what's nice is like the low end is already there, so it's really he's there for texture and for melody, So it's that's a relief. We're gonna make things sound great without. It's not gonna be the kind of thing where like, man, I wish he would turn the guitar down, or this guitar player won't shut the fuck up.
It's just shredding over everything,
Shredding over everything.
It's enough.
We did cut the wah pedal out, but he plays in a psych band, so I get it.
Well, and it's a pretty lush record, and of course we're talking about the new one here, KRÜLLER, and there's a lot of layers to it, right? Which isn't to say that like everything was like super minimalist before necessarily, but I think it lends itself well to the extra instrumentation. I mean, you talked about not wanting to really cut anything out. Was it difficult when you're sitting there and finishing the arrangements and mixing and whatnot, like to figure out like, okay, that is great, but it distracts from this other thing that needs to be doing at that time? And I guess more explicitly, was putting this one together any different? I mean, circumstantially, it's going to be different because it's during the COVID and during quarantine, but were you approaching it differently than the other records?
Well, I feel like every record has its own kind of interesting set of circumstances. And I think back to, let's just work backwards. Beastland was in between album cycles and touring schedules. And I was just sort of, I don't know, it was at a time when we just ran out of time. But that was kind of cool because it put us under the gun, and the album is a little bit more harsh sounding than I think it would have been if I'd had a lot more time. I think it would have approached sort of the lush, more, I don't know. I just think it sounds a little harsh. It sounds a little more punk rock, a little bit more harsh industrial, a little more angry, threw a little bit more distortion on things just to get them to sit better in the mix. Mel Honig working with Phil Anselmo, I think like that he had his whole team of people on that, and that was amazing. He's that guy's a hell of a musician, man, and he helped me a lot in that. But they took a lot of control out of it for me. I couldn't use a click track. There were some rules that they had, that I.
Interesting.
What?
I said that's really interesting. Like not using.
Yeah, he wanted things to be all live. Like he.
Yeah. So there could be more of an ebb and flow to it, right? I mean, that'd be the idea.
Yeah, and now when I go back and listen to it, there's really an ebb and flow. It's like
but a little bit too much ebb there.
A little too much ebb, and but then going back to like Drone Machines, that's the similarity. That album for me, I had endless amount of time, and that's what it's all about. I just had, pandemic started, and we sort of knew that we were going to be in the shit for a while, and I was able to just sit down and once I got all the parts from everybody, I still had like 4 months to mix it, and between Jason and I and Phil coming down and giving advice, and I just got it to sound exactly how I wanted. I have no complaints about this, the way that it sounded, the heaviness of the low end, the sort of lush, the depth and breadth of like the low tone, like the layers of the low stuff for me is like satisfying. It hits the subs and it like fills your ears. That's what I like.
It definitely seems like it's the kind of thing that would reward someone with a sound system with a subwoofer.
Yeah.
Rather than just like playing it unaccompanied through phone speakers, was the first time I ever saw somebody do that. I was absolutely horrified. I was like, oh, Oh God.
Well,
But
you got to make sure it sounds good on those, but there's like the when I listen to some of my favorite like doom records that are played by like live like stoner doom bands, I just don't understand how they. Where is their kick drum? You know,
oh, we left it at home, dude.
and these are my
I hear
favorite.
you.
No, I'm not going to name any bands, but like I came from like listening to like drum and bass and Godflesh and like dubstep and these types of music, and it's all about the kick drum and the bass line, and a lot of these bands, I think like just turn the bass drum up.
I mean, yes, I agree. I'm pro kick drum, and I'd vote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Godflesh is a good example. Did you know? I think when you do when you're in a band such as yourself, right, you're going to get like a lot of comparisons, and people have a certain palette of bands that they compare to. And that's always been something that kind of from the beginning, actually in a different way, more towards now. I mean, I think if anything, like some of the newer stuff is like Jesu, if you're going to pick a Broderick joint, which I'm totally for as well.
Yeah.
But there's worse things to do than be compared to geniuses as well, right? I mean, that's it's probably okay.
Justin Broderick was just such a trailblazer, you know. He still is in terms of guys that like got a techno project. He's mixed hip hop and metal in a way that most people can't do, and they should never try to do it because they'll just fail miserably.
Yeah.
And he's just one of the best. He can sing beautifully. He can be harsh. He can be aggressive. There's a track, Circle of Shit, which is on Songs of Love and Hate, and I just love this track because it's just got this like hip hop beat, and it's heavy, it's bassy, it's got guitar, it's like perfect. Like it's such a melding of all these genres. I love it.
Yeah, and he's got a long history of it, right? And that's fantastic. There's something to be said for knowing that. But it's, I mean, do you think, is that something where, I mean, do you get tired of hearing about it, like of what people's ideas of for author and publisher?
No, I love the comparison. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he's a huge influence. There's just no, I've crafted my own thing, but I will, if people say it's a Godflesh ripoff, well, it is. So,
well, you did. What is it, Body Dome Light, right?
I mean, try to play like another band. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing is like, I've tried to, subconsciously model my voice after Scott Kelly's voice from Neurosis. For it wasn't on purpose. It was just like I was in high school listening to him, and it was like when I went up and first screamed to the microphone, it was like, what was I? I was singing Through Silver and Blood, trying to sound like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with those guys, I mean, after a show, they're just spent, right? They're just like, they've laid it all out there.
I have a story exactly about that. Exactly.
Oh, really? Okay. Lay it on me.
I got to play with Neurosis the first time. I think it was Southwest Terror Fest. I don't know how much time we have. So if you.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
There was Southwest Terror Fest. I think it was at I can't remember the venue in Tucson, but like Sun was playing and Neurosis and some other bands, and I was playing, and we were sort of sharing like this green room thing in the back. And so I was used to, from the Phil Anselmo tour, like feel like the party. And so like after the show, like after his set, we'd all roll into the green room and party because Phil wanted to party. So Neurosis, the first time they play, like I run into the green room and I got some beers and I'm all a little bit tipsy, and Scott and all of them, they've got like incense, and the dudes are like laid back with their shirts off, like very chill. Like the smell and the aroma and the whole vibe was like, not
a house party. Yeah. not wild antics backstage in any way, shape, or form.
That's not to say that didn't happen at some future shows. Those they do throw down, but it was just funny. It's like, oh, okay, everybody's got their own thing.
I mean, do you like kick open the door with like a 12-pack under one arm and be like, hey, hi guys. Sorry, y'all.
It's like, man, these guys are intense.
Well, but I mean, it's like, look at the show that they put on and that have put on for, decades, right? I mean, it's there's nothing like an exorcism practically. So
yeah, it takes a lot out of them, you know, especially Scott is just, you know, one of these guys, he just puts it all out there every night, and you can tell at the end of the show. You know, even before he plays, like backstage, he's pacing around, you know, like getting in the mood, and you're like,
yeah,
do not get in his way.
Yeah, exactly. But well, be forewarned. You should know, but in case you don't do it.
Yep.
Although I will say, all those guys are such absolute sweethearts of just pure soul human beings. You know,
Absolutely, yeah. Endless thanks, and they're just they've helped me so much. Got me my first start in Europe, get with agents and stuff, and
so getting back to that's great, by the way. I love the idea of you being the party monster in that situation, and those guys not being in the party mood at all. That's
I am the Punisher from time to time.
Did you when you started off doing Hawthorne Punisher? Because if I remember correctly, you played in a couple metal bands before Hawthorne Punisher, right? So was the idea that like, let me just try this out and see if I can even do this, or did you have like a more overarching concept from the beginning?
Well, the one man band thing, I think, was a sort of a result of I had a drum machine band with guy Sean McCumber, who actually writes a lot for Decibel magazine, and Rue Morgue, and he and I grew up in southern New Hampshire, and I think when I was freshman in college, we had a drum machine band called Empathy Test, and there was another band now. There's another band called Empathy Test now, who's more like I believe like EBM synthwave stuff. Not the same band, but we were doing like drum machine, 2 guitars, bass player, my friend Travis Anderson, and that sort of planted the seed of like I was programming the SR16 Alesis drum machine. And then when I was in college, I had a band that was called Falkirk, which was a more kind of metalcore, early Mastodon, Neurosis kind of vibe. I was singing and writing a lot in that band. And then when I graduated, I went to Boston, broke that band up, but never done any real touring, you know?
Right.
And so then in Boston, I had a band called Born, which I really liked, which was much more progressive, like dueling guitar riffs and poorly harmonized vocals, and we spent so long doing it, and then like there was like one of the guys had a kid, there was, you know, somebody was smoking too much weed and couldn't pay the rent for the space, and so when I went back to grad school, I was pretty much over that. You know, I was like, I'm not going to spend 3 years developing a band and then have to depend on 3 other people's like problems, you know.
Right, like their lives and interests and obligations.
Yeah, and I miss the collaboration because I learn a lot from other people. But I just know that I'm reliable and I'm hardworking, and like with the cases and the tables and the making the instruments to fit the cases to make it actually so you can tour and fly places. Like making the one man band was the only way that I could make this happen. You know, I know that I can have a 1-person band, Hawthorne Punisher, and I can rely on myself. So.
Yeah, but again, you have to. It's buy the ticket, take the ride too. By the same token, right? I mean, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it was, I mean, at least at the beginning. I mean, I didn't really starting in 2004. We wrote the first album, and it was guitar and drum machine, and I would play it to my fellow art students at the school at UCSD, and they sort of nodded along and just kind of let me do it. I don't know if any of them really liked it. You know?
It was
I don't think I was a fan of metal in the whole department. I was just like, hey, I'm having a concert, and they would just come and have the beer. And then slowly, when I started playing more noise and less like industrial metal, I was doing noise for a few years, 3 or 4, 5 years. Basically, it was just because I didn't know how to play the instruments properly. So I was like,
right. So was there like a learning curve towards that of like, oh, actually this is musical when I, pull this way and and it rotates at this particular BPM?
Yeah, it was an experimentation. I was like, okay, I got rid of all my like Marshall and Mesa Boogie stacks and built my own sound system. So there was a guy, Matt Hope, who's an artist. You can look him up. He is came from rave culture in the UK, and he was in the program at UCSD, and he was like, all that crap, all those particle board cabinets are shit. If you want to make a real sound system, you build it out of Baltic birch, and you design it with software so that it can handle all of the wattage and everything. You can make real bass. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna follow this guy.
Yeah.
And so I sold all this. Yeah, exactly.
It's easy. Just build it. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Build it. But we had the facilities and we had nothing else to do. So he taught me how to build all that stuff. And so I built this big dub, like rave sound system for metal, for industrial metal.
Yeah.
And then I was building these things. And so really at the beginning, I was just experimenting with sound. Like, how does this thing sound through this? And how can I get the most bass? Fast forward now, it's like, I use some of that stuff, but anyway, at the early part, it wasn't that I'm a huge fan of noise or drone metal and drone music. It was kind of I'm gonna test everything out this way.
Well, it's a good way to test out the capabilities of the things you're using to make it, right? And then you can, hey, I've done that. Now I'm going to do something else with this.
Yeah, and like for example, you're playing a song, and I'm hitting the drum with my right hand, and I'm playing the throttle, making a pitch bend with my left hand through my software, going through this big sound system, and then I want to change parts. So I want to change the sound that each of these things are going to make. So I made a pedal board, and I press a button that would change this thing in software. So it got to the point where my setup was like playing this whole set, sitting in a chair, left hand, right hand, mouth, microphone, controlling. I was blowing beats that were a MIDI controller with my mouth, forgetting the things that I was pressing. I was probably drinking too much. And, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to really streamline this stuff. And so I started to learn the software more and started developing like ways to automate the changing of all the machinery, the settings. So that was a big part of it, is like the software to like making. So the extra member in my band was like software, knowing when changes were happening.
Yeah. And knowing how best to deploy that in a way that, it's not going to make you hopefully too in your head about it. So you can still perform the song, but it's also performing the task that it's there to do at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. And just, endless touring and endless failures, really. I mean, like just playing tons of shows and getting to the point where every night you would just change a little bit, get on the laptop as you're driving around and change some stuff and rewiring things, and eventually getting to the point where it was like, now I can get through sets with consistency. And I think I only had one Tool show where I had a technical problem for the most part, just because we, every day it's like 2 hours before you sit in there and you test things out and check wires, and
it's a whole operation. I mean, but I think that's, it seems to me that you take the challenge of it not being easy. Like you have to want it. You have to want to do it like a little bit. It's not easy, right? Like you have to, and for me, that kind of leads to some of the immediacy and also just the unpredictability of whether it's true or not. It does kind of seem like the whole thing could fly apart at any minute. Not like that the compositions are, but I mean, like literally the equipment sort of like, oh wow, that's he's building an unholy death machine, and like at any minute, like
there is sort of like a feeling of like, I just remember like being a goalkeeper. I'm not a goalkeeper. My brother was in soccer, a big soccer fan, but it was like when you get scored on, you have to have a really short memory, because you just have to forget that it happened. You can't get bummed out about it. And so like when I have a bad show on a tour of like 23 days, like you just can't get bummed about it. And you just got to move on and say, hey, the next one's going to be good. There was only 25 people there anyway, so who gives a shit? There's really keeping like a positive attitude about it.
Well, and that's one of the nice things about touring, right? Is that you got a chance tomorrow to do better if you feel that you didn't do well. And I would say also that the worst part of that is if you think that you played badly, and then some of the merch table comes up, hey man, that was awesome, and you're like, oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah, young musicians or whatever, starting musician, just play as many shows as you can and don't put too much value into any one of them.
Yeah, it's more about the it's the river, right?
Yeah, to pick the one.
So there's two things that I want to make sure that I do before I let you go. One of which I want to talk a little more in depth about. Drone Machines, like the company, not the. You got so many things called Drone Machines, so I feel like I have to stipulate, but
Got the album and the company. Yep.
the album and the company, yeah. So dronemachines.com, right? Like just for folks that are curious. And so, what are you hoping to achieve with kind of unleashing this piece of it over to the world? I mean, you've got these like sound machines, right? That do the thing. This is, I think, the perfect time. You know, people are locked down, trying new stuff. I think everyone's baking bread for a bit. Why not do some drone machines, right? Sure. But what are you thinking this is something that like other folks are going to latch onto for creativity and stuff like that? Is that the end goal, or is it just like put it out there and see what people do with it?
Right. Well, that's a good question because obviously I don't think what I do and the type of music that I play is not exactly the most popular type of music in the world. And the guy, Jason, who's a partner in this, we talk about that a lot. Like, we're not going to make these like industrial goth machines that, you know, spider webs all over them. These are
right.
But also, like, we understand that there's a sensibility of things being raw, and there's not a lot of plastic, and there's not a lot of edifice. You know, like, we're not trying to make these things into this, like, they are the thing that they look like. You know, you slide it, you push on it, it's heavy. You're making an interface that is like, you want to feel like you're in a little machine shop, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you want to feel like you're moving dials. You're at Chernobyl, you know, like anything could explode out of them.
Totally. Yeah.
In Chernobyl, they did not like put rubber coating on their knobs to make them feel better. You know, like they were metal knobs and they melted.
Harsh, brutalist metal. That yeah, exactly. You were pushing a thing back with all your strength because nobody bothered counterbalancing it to make it easy to do. You know,
we want it to be, we want this to be a really tactile. You know, if you have an instrument, we want it to feel good. Like, so we're gonna have things like materials like concrete and wood and raw steel. You know, if you use raw steel, it rusts. So as you go, like the parts that your hands touch will sort of like polish the surfaces. Things like that you start to get this like relationship with your instrument, you know, that is, you know, you're not going to get a relationship with an array of pads and say, oh man, these things changed my life. There's these rubber pads and an array of 8x8. Like, I love this thing. Like, oh my God, if I didn't have this, who would I be without this? You know?
Yeah.
And so like, we're trying to make something that like you can play without looking. You don't need to go through menus. It's open source. So like, there will be a community of people online and a forum where you can trade code. So you can program these things in a very concrete way. That's something that
that's great. That's awesome, because who knows what people are going to come up with, right? Somebody might come up with something. Oh my God, I never thought of that. Fantastic.
I'm sure they will, because like we right now, you know, we have limitations software wise. We're hiring some people to help us, but like we're going to make this thing have the electronics so that you can do all sorts of things like controlling lights. You can control video installations. You can control sounds. You know, eventually we might put our own sound engines in them so that like, you know, they are their own synthesizer, because a lot of people will ask like, well, it's not its own. Does it make sound? And I'm like, well, okay, what types of electronic instruments make sound? Synthesizers like Moog synthesizers. Well, that's just a controller with a built-in sound engine, you know?
Exactly.
It doesn't have magic in it that makes sound. It's like so yeah, we might do that, but like our focus is really the hardware, ball bearings, metal, really high quality things that will last longer than you live.
I love that, because I feel like that's nobody's focus.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, guitars, like a Gibson guitar, like these things get handed down through generations, you know, but like nobody's handing, I don't want to shit on any of the electronic music instrumentation companies, but like like Circlon is a company, Sequentix. They make a Circlon. It's a sequencer. This stuff is hardcore. People will have these for years.
Yeah, it's
There
built
are
to
high-end Moog stuff, absolutely. Electron. There's some companies out there do some really great stuff, but it's just a shame, especially with climate change and sustainability. Like, we need to start thinking about, like, if you're going to make something, you're going to charge people money for it. Don't make it fail.
Yeah. Don't make something disposable that'll be purposeful obsolescence.
Yeah,
a year and a half. That's interesting. Well, I didn't even think about it from that perspective, but that makes a lot of sense, really. Because and if anyone ever balks to the price, that can be your go-to. Also, you can be like, "Come on, man."
and then one other thing is just like from a performance perspective, we want these things to be so you're standing on stage. You're not like standing and looking at like a desk. These things are stacked in a way that the audience can see you playing it.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like we're thinking about that. So like from far away, you can see these things moving and you see this sort of the intricacies. We're trying not to hide some of that. I hope people enjoy that.
Well, it seems like it's a time for that, right? And that's been part of the nice thing about, even just things like the boutique guitar pedal revolution. Like, just like people are more interested in like the mechanics of stuff that maybe people were fine just being like, I push the button and it does the thing before. Now people are interested in it, and I think that's good for people that are natural tinkers. It certainly seems to be good for people to have a unique setup such as yourself and make your own things. So this is a way to share into that world. I think it's a fascinating move, and I'm really stoked to see what happens with it, frankly.
I am too. I'm not stoked about being a salesman, but I hope I don't.
Well, I mean, great the merch table, I guess it's
customer service.
Yeah,
that's creative.
Get a person for that as soon as you can is my advice. Yeah. I want to talk about the record too. It is record eve at the time of this recording, of course. Yes. And I was wondering if you and I want to be mindful of your time, but I've been doing this thing the past year or so where we kind of go through each song on the record, and you can tell me any inspiration behind it, why it's titled that way, lyrics, arrangement choices, just whatever comes to mind. Is that something you think you'd be into?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. So let's do it. So let's start with the title. We'll start with the title. That's an interesting title. It's got an umlaut. Were you not thinking about typing things out, or is that for?
We accidentally held the U a little too long, and on the iPhone. Well, the name is a. I'm trying to leave this on there as a little like kernel of mystery, New England folklore. That's sort of based in my. I don't know. I'm gonna leave a little mystery in there, but the title sort of is a little bit of New England folklore that it was maybe not around anymore, days old. But it sort of became this. It was this placeholder name that I was using for the album because it was going to be another project. KRÜLLER was going to be like a electronic, like dub, like heavy, kind of like Zonal, which Dustin Broderick did, and heavy, dark electronic. But anyway, it was like placeholder name that became, when I was talking to Zlatko Mitev, who did the artwork for the album, we were developing this sort of like futuristic world, post-societal, like breakdown, kind of like apocalyptic world. And there were these vehicles that he developed, and the vehicle was sort of became a KRÜLLER.
So cool. Yeah.
Kind of a fictional, we made it up more or less.
It reminds me a little bit of, like the artwork about like 90s role-playing games like Rifts or something, where it's like, this MDC weapon does, like stuff like that, which I totally dig, but it's also got an aesthetic that feels like it could be on a Trapper Keeper for a very cool person as well, and which is also cool. Yeah,
there's I was gonna say like Melkin Honig, that album. I just sort of like playing on these like words and like the way I can't think of the word right now. The way the word.
Portmanteau. Is that it?
I've also been playing Dark Souls, and it feels like a weapon that I would get in Dark Souls.
Fantastic.
Although I hope no one knows. I can't get past one of these. But anyway, each song. Sorry.
So drone carrying dread.
Drone carrying dread. Also, that name maybe someone will realize I sort of riffed off of another song name that has a similar, but
Yeah.
Drunk Hearing Dread is Parable of the Sower. A lot of the sci-fi novels I was reading during that summer. It's an adventure like track about sort of a crazy like violent event that happens that takes me like one on an adventure of survival, and sort of like imagining if things had really broken down as they looked like they were going to and might still. But
yeah, sit tight, folks. We're not through it yet.
yeah, we're not through it yet. And it's like one of those songs, and I really the chord progression and the heaviness is really simple, but I feel like it hits you. And then the riff that Phil did and the parts that Jason wrote up high just kind of melded all together.
Next up is Incinerator.
Incinerator is probably the heaviest track on the album, which the video will be coming out tomorrow. I'm pretty psyched. Ansel Wong-Fang and James Rexroad really put together like a really fun, oh man, it's got some like Gilliam kind of vibes.
Totally.
And he was a brutal director and made me do all sorts of things I didn't want to do. But that song is also about like social unrest and like fascist pigs and cops and all this kind of shit. But it's much more violent, like climate change, climate refugees, and all this kind of stuff, like exploding.
Yeah, well, that's a good one for it. Centurion after that.
Centurion, I worked with Justin Chancellor. We got back from the Tool Tour, and he and I kind of kept in touch, and we were going to do a track. And I had this. It was the one track on that album that was totally programmed. I didn't all the tracks. For the most part, Blacksmith a little bit, but Centurion, I programmed it. So I sent him some beats, and he started writing some bass riffs to it, and I would add some synths, and we went back and forth. And right after January 6th riots, it's definitely got vibes there. It's kind of poking a little fun, not just a little bit. Some modern day American Legion. So
Legion and Legion, yeah. Interchangeable, really, these days.
Yep.
One of my favorites, Maiden Star.
Oh yeah, this is the one I connected with the most on the album. And speaking of Jesu, I think definitely this hits those sort of low, heavy like fifths, and like in the same way, Drunk Hearing Dread, like you hit those. This was all about like tuning the subwoofers in my studio, hitting these fifths, with my keyboard, and then blending this mini rack pitch bender that I have into it. So it's just it's a little love song about things, going to hell at the end of the world. And also a little Torch vibes in there. I think like Hum totally. And these bands. Hum had a new album that came out.
Yes, the one that came out like 2 years ago or something.
Yeah,
right?
Awesome album.
So, and like out of nowhere, just like surprise Hum record, like
wow, surprise, this record kicks ass.
There's a cool video for that one too for Maiden Star. That's if I remember.
Oh correctly. No, we did one for Drunk Hearing Dread. The one.
Okay, so you're right. My bad. Yeah.
Zlatko did all this amazing illustration for that.
Yeah. That's the one's got the illustration. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
It's getting old. Misery lyrically is, I was during the whole summer of protests and Trump's border wall was getting built on the southern border and near us in southeast San Diego, and they were building a wall, and they were blasting through some of these Kumeyaay burial sites, and they were finding bones. And so there were people going out there to protest and try to stop the building of his border wall. So I was, through connections through my wife, she does a lot of activism, found out that they needed people. So I went out there. And so through that process, I just sort of learned a little bit about the Kumeyaay at San Diego and how they kept getting pushed out of our, out of the places that had water in San Diego. Basically anywhere that had any vegetation that would grow. So they were pushed out into the hills. And anyway, so the song is about colonization, and
it's not a very positive song. I'm not going to say anything like that. But and then it was largely a programmed beat. I was playing it live, but it's very electronic sounding, and I did that because I was hoping that Danny Carey would play drums over it, and he had pulled his one of his muscles or ripped one of his muscles.
Okay.
Weightlifting. I don't know that guy.
Danny, come on, man.
Yeah. And so we were like down to the wire, and he was like, I think I could do it. So he threw the drums on it. And it was like he did one take, and I was able to mix like all these Danny Carey drum tracks. I felt I invited all my friends down. I was like, you got to check this out. I got all the Danny Carey rough tracks.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Why wouldn't you not? Right. Of course. And to good effect, I would say too, for that one also.
Yeah. It's awesome to have like fills and like hi-hats. Like those are things I don't do.
So it gives it a unique sound because of that. And that's as
I haven't decided if live I can't really just sequence his drums, but sometimes I'll sequence stuff, and I don't know. It seems like too much. I can't have him along with me. It's going to be a different track live.
Well, I guess it would have to be, right? I mean, but that's fine too. It's still a good song without that. So it's just what's going to have a different life in that way if you decide to play it.
Yep.
And then of course after that is the fantastic Portishead cover, which is a band that I dearly love.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, Dummy is just one of those all-time great albums. And they are, I've said this in too many interviews, but I'll just say it again. I feel like it's like the doom metal of the electronic world. They're like the what's the word? The sleep of trip hop and dub and electronic and drum and bass. And
there's a darkness to what they do too that I think like translates well.
I think it's more like melancholy. That's what I feel like is for this album is the theme is like this sort of like, it's melancholy, but it's kind of enjoyable at the same time. You're a little bit bummed out, but you're drinking a bottle of wine and you're going to watch, I don't know, you're going to watch like a Lars von Trier movie, but you're going to kind of enjoy it.
I was going to say Fassbender, but that it amounts to the same.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I actually I played that song back in 2007. If you search on YouTube, you'll find it. There's a Author and Punisher Glory Box. Musically, listen to it. It's probably not the best quality, but I've been covering that song for a long time, and now I was able to do it how I wanted to.
Awesome. Well, and like I like the pacing of it too. I think it gives it a unique feel that way, rather than it just being. Not that the pacing of the original is bad or anything, but it just gives it a unique feel, and I think that's nice for covers that aren't just, hey guys, remember the thing? Here's the thing.
Well, it's like when you update a song, I wonder if they went and played it now, like if they wouldn't replace some of the, the bass tones to match the way things change,
Right.
They have to make it sound really hit hard on a sound system. So anyway.
Well, cool. They did that live album that was at I think Roseland Ballroom, and they did what was the big hit? Sour Times. They did it purposefully like more minor key and like a little more dirgy, and like it sounded like really cool. Like it sounded more brutal, I guess is the best way to put it. If that's like,
yeah.
But I was like, oh, that's a great way to take your hit, so everyone gets to hear the song that like there's 25% of the people here that only want to hear that song and that's what they're here for. But do it in a way that's interesting for the musicians as well as for the diehards.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Blacksmith
is a track I did with Jason. We wrote this track together. Jason Began Viter, as he goes by, and I wanted to have a funny story about this track. I sent this. Well, I don't mean this in any disregard, but I sent this track to Health because we were going to do a collab track, and I sent them this track a year before we recorded this, and they sent it back to me and said, "Oh, we can't work with this." I was like, bummed. I was like, "Fuck!" I really wanted to hear what they did on it.
That would be crazy, yeah.
What are you thinking? But anyway, we'll get a track soon. But yeah, Jason, I wanted to have a track that sort of started with my normal like heavy, like low things that blend together, and then kind of evolve into just craziness, and my drums were replaced by breakcore and jungle beats and stuff. So that's that track.
Do you know Health from way back? Like
I've never met Health, but we chat. We just got in touch through because we have similar interests and go in similar circles and stuff. And now we're doing this tour in the fall with Perturbator, so I'll get to hang out with them. But hopefully that'll happen soon.
But the only reason I asked is because if I remember correctly, they're from like the Smell scene, like the LA club, the Smell, not like.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm in San Diego, so I've never. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have met them, but I don't think. And John is from San Diego originally, but I believe he lives up in maybe LA, somewhere near there.
Right.
So no, we never met.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's around the same time, so it's not outside the realm of possibility, right? But it also doesn't mean that everybody hangs out together too all the time.
I'm gonna hit him up this summer. Maybe we'll come up with something.
There you go. You'll figure it out. You'll get that collab going.
Yeah.
And then last song on the record, title track.
KRÜLLER.
Yeah.
This song is like the name, is a bit of an adventure into ambivalence. I don't know. I think this is one of those songs, like a lot of my previous tracks. It's sort of a bit of I would say like a free association of just having fun with lyrics and thinking about. It's a much lighter track, I think, than the rest of the album. It's just kind of ends up maybe not the way that the song evolves musically, but at least from a lyrical standpoint, it's just kind of it's a fun track. Not much to say about that one.
I mean, it's the title track, so it's clearly there's some affinity towards the record, right?
Yeah, last songs are always a weird thing for me. Like the Beastland on the last album was like, yeah, I don't know. It just maybe it's like, well, I don't know what to name the song. Let's just give it the title and track name,
Well, I think that's definitely the case. I think with a lot of the bands from the 70s, like I don't care. I'm just here to do cocaine, man. Like whatever, that's fine. But
yeah, there was somebody that said that that I don't know if there's that album Tarkus.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know it well. I knew the album cover before I knew the album, but yes, I know it well.
And so my friend Braden, who produced the last album, was like, "Oh yeah, this KRÜLLER with the truck on the front reminds me of Tarkus because it's got that truck on the front."
Oh yeah, it's like the armadillo with like tank treads, if I remember.
Kind of a nonsensical thing, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's kind of a similar vibe." And of course, I didn't know the reference because he would just know things like that.
Yeah, no things like the Tarkus album cover. Yeah. Well, but it's an armadillo with tank treads, and it's got a gun apparently too attached to it as well. But yeah, boy, that was.
History repeats itself, I guess. Yeah.
I guess Greg Lake was like, "Yep, looks good."
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. All right.
That's what we'll be saying 20 years, 30 from now, 40 years from now.
So with KRÜLLER, you've got I know the Bandcamp, you got a limited edition pre-order, and it's like the 2 LP. It's like the Black Ice with Spatter. And I'm bringing this up because there's a lot of vinyl nerds that listen to the show. Yeah. And then there's another LP set. It's pink and orange, right? It's the 2 LP. Anyway, there's a lot of cool stuff. It seems like coming with this. That's this record.
Yeah, I'm going to be releasing some merch. I was waiting till tomorrow. I should have done it before, but things have been so crazy on this record compared to other ones that so yeah, look out for that. There's going to be some new merch, some more tour dates announced. We're adding Tijuana as a warm up.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that'll be March 5th before LA, and then changing some venues. It's not like other tours, man. Like everything is like, oh, that venue canceled, they're closed. Oh fuck,
yeah.
So going to Russia, so like maybe we'll be in war, or maybe you'll be stuck in prison.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? Anything can happen. Back to tour.
Agent just wrote, he's like, "Oh, do you want to add Kiev in between these two shows?" I'm like, I guess so.
Sure. Why not? Well, so yeah, authorandpunisher.bandcamp.com. You can also get it at, of course, through Relapse. That's if you've heard of that place.
Holy Mountain carries a lot of my stuff. They pretty much are the U.S. seller for all the AMP merch, and then Evil Greed over in Europe has the LPs, and we'll be releasing some merch as well tomorrow if you're in Europe. We're looking to add some other ones, but yep.
Killer. Awesome. Tristan, I want to thank you for spending so much time with me. This has been great. Last question I have, it's the only canned question I ever ask, and you can choose to interpret it however you like.
Okay.
Why do you do what you do?
Oh man, I think it's just the whole adventure of everything. I think as much as I stress out over which tables that I have, and have way too many Pelican cases, I just enjoy getting in a van and heading off to a new location every day, and tasting new food and meeting new people. So,
well, I'm glad you get to do it, and I hope I get to see it at some point.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun. It really chill atmosphere. I enjoyed it.
Take care, brother.
Take care.
Safe
See you
travel.
later. Thanks.
There he goes. Tristan Shone, Author and Punisher. Cool guy. So yeah, get that Author and Punisher, bandcamp.com. Get that pre-order if you are a vinyl person and if you like things that are cool. So let's listen to Maiden Star, actually. That's a good one. Yeah, and as always, protonicreversal.com for the archives. Always free, no ads, no sponsors, no kidding. Thanks for watching and listening, new listeners. All right. All right. Maiden Star, Author and Punisher. That's of KRÜLLER. That, if you are listening to this live, that comes out tomorrow. For everyone else, that will that has come out. So go get it. It's in the area where the cool stuff is on the internet. It's also authorandpunisher.bandcamp.com. Relapse Records. All that good biz. Brand new, 2022. Anyway, name of this show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so much for listening to it. This show broadcasts Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific on Radio Nope. RadioNope.com. Say yes to Nope. Also Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, I suppose. Whatever the kids are up to. Yeah, the kids. Archive's always free. ProtonicReversal.com. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding.
As we come to the close of our broadcast today.
If you like the show and you want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month at the patreon.com/Protonic Reversal will absolutely, positively, 100% achieve that goal.
Signing off.
Also help support the show.
Mr. and Mrs. America, all ships at sea.
Thanks everyone for sharing the show around.
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Liking, subscribing, all that business. All that really helps. Protonic Reversal also on
I've
Instagram, protonic.reversal.
50,000
Twitter.
watts of power.
Protonic Reversal Pod, I think. Facebook Protonic Reversal Show. I should really have those be standardized, huh? Anyway. Protonic Pod for Twitter. See, I'm giving out the wrong names. Anyway, I appreciate all the support and folks helping conspire the fire.
Into electricity.
Protonic Reversal. Still on top.
Can you hear me now?
Stay safe out there.
Out on Route 128, you're dark and lonely.
And take it easy.
You got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. There is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast here. My radio.